Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to have with me Craig Meriwether, and let me tell you about Craig. Craig is a mindset coach and a clinical hypnotherapist, helping people eliminate negative emotions and trauma so they can reach their full potential. He has helped thousands get rid of test anxiety, fears, phobias, change unlimited or limited beliefs, and increase their confidence with Ace Any Test, the most comprehensive course for test anxiety relief. He is the author of the best-selling program, Depression 180, about which psychologist Dr. Stephen Gergovich, I think is how it's pronounced, Gergovich, is a clinical assistant professor of medicine at the Center for Integrative, Integrative Medicine. Integrative Medicine, yes.
University of Arizona.
Today. As I explained to Craig earlier, I've been doing this since 7:30 this morning, so my mouth is not so great, but that's all right. We'll continue on. So,
Everybody calls him Dr. G.
Dr. G, and I can see why. Says that Craig Meriwether's book is the most comprehensive and user-friendly resource to help ourselves and loved ones struggling with depression. He highly recommends this book to everyone that wants to help turning their depression around. Craig has also created the Mind Mastery Blueprint and Life Transformation Kits, and is a featured author in New York Times best-selling book, Pearls of Wisdom, 30 Inspirational Ideas to Live Your Best Life Now. Along with Jack Canfield, Marcy Shimoff, and Janet Atwood, Craig also hosts the popular podcast Tipping Point Radio, interviewing such experts in mind, body, and spiritual transformation as Marianne Williamson, John Dispenza, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, and jazz great John McLaughlin, and many more. So we're going to talk about today some things that in this changing environment where a lot of people have to pivot, whether they wanted to or not, with companies downsizing, right-sizing, doing all those things, or people that are, in college trying to get a leg up and change maybe their careers or just starting their careers. So 10 tips to ace your exam, your audition, or your interview. So please welcome my guest, Craig Meriwether.
Thank you, Vicki. I really appreciate that nice introduction. We have a lot to go through and a short amount of time to do it. So
we're gonna press on.
Press on.
So first question, very easy question, is where do you live?
Oh, sure. Flagstaff, Arizona, and we're a little bit south of the Grand Canyon, a little bit east of Sedona, and up in the mountains. We get snow every year. We get the 4 seasons, so it's a really beautiful small town to raise a family in.
It is a beautiful town. I've been there myself. So just briefly, I gave all of the kind of highlights, but talk about your journey that took you to where you are today with this, you, you know,
Yeah.
really, I
Um,
think something that's needed in our world. So talk about, what was your driving force?
it, with a lot of people who get into the healing modalities, whatever you're working with, as a healer or as a therapist or a counselor or hypnotherapist like I am, uh, came from my own pain I was going through. I struggled a lot with depression in my
Mm,
life, a lot of
mm,
anxiety,
mm,
and my mother struggled with a lot of depression. And uh, this was mainly noticeable in the 1980s when I was a teenager. And this was way before the SSRI drugs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, were coming, Prozacs and things like that. Those came out in
mm-hmm,
the mid 90s, late 90s.
mm-hmm.
And of course, there's no internet back in 1980, or at least internet that us common
Was
people
worth
could,
anything.
yeah, they could connect to. So really, it was just whatever book you could find at the library or your
Yeah.
bookstore, maybe an article in a magazine. And the biggest thing to do around depression back then was talk therapy, and I've done my share of talk therapy. What I find with talk therapy, it could be extraordinarily helpful and healing, but if you're not talking about the root issue,
Mm-hmm.
healing really can't happen. If you don't know what the root issue is, if it's unconscious, then healing can't happen. uh, you may get some relief, uh, but in terms of really dealing with the depression, if the depression is due to some sort of hurt or pain or trauma that happened in the past, not much is going to happen. And so I spent a lot of the 80s and 90s kind of searching, but not finding too many solutions. It was really the birth of my son in the year 2000 that I
Mm,
really wanted to get my life together. Uh,
mm.
I know my mom struggled with depression. I struggled with depression and anxiety. And I thought, well, if my son has to deal
There
with
is
this as
it.
well,
Yeah.
or gets triggered in him as well, then I wanted to be able to help. I wanted to be able to at least
Yeah.
point in the directions of how you can get better. And so I really started working on myself. At that point, I was kind of nervous about the side effects of the Prozacs and the other antidepressant medication. So I didn't really feel like going down that road at that time. And so I just started doing research and research. And that, at 2000, 2001, the internet was coming out. And you could find a lot of information. You could find research studies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started doing the work and finding various things, whether it's diet and supplements and exercise and just all sorts of different tools and techniques and strategies for mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And after some time, I realized it'd been a while since I'd felt depressed, felt anxious. And so
Mm,
I realized I had this toolbox filled with, strategies and skills and techniques
mm-hmm.
to help with anxiety, with uh, depression. So that's when that book came out, that Depression 180. I started writing that back in 2011, something like that, 2012, and then the others kind of followed in the podcast. And I loved the work so much, talking to people about this stuff, that I ended up training to become a hypnotherapist and neurolinguistic programming specialist, and been working one-on-one with people. And one of the big issues that people come to me for is anxiety and nervousness, and specifically around tests. uh, if they're trying for a promotion at work, job interview, or having to give a presentation or a speech or something. And well, I can help them with that and do with these one-on-one sessions. I realized there really wasn't a program out there to really help people. There's some, a couple of books, actually, a handful of children's books out there on Amazon, and a couple of programs that are an hour long, and, a handful of 5-minute videos on YouTube. But I didn't see anything really comprehensive. And so that's where that ACE test program comes. So it's been this long journey, started about 24 years ago, to really start helping myself and in that, and as a lot of people find when they get into this, maybe a kind of a healing profession or a therapeutic profession, it's like, well, you heal yourself, and now you got all these tools and skills, and people start asking you, what did you do to get better? And then all of a sudden, here you are, so many years later, and it's been a fun journey, at least to the point of like, learning about hypnotherapy. And I don't know that writing a book is so much fun. If anybody out there has written a book, sort of deadlines and things like that. But it's been quite the adventure. How about that?
That's
we'll
exactly
leave it at
right. So as you work with people, and as you said, you have your own experience, but maybe identify some of the problems, the pain, the trauma that in the subconscious is making people anxious and fearful around tests, around auditions. Even for us, teaching, having people figure out what's keeping them from being comfortable speaking.
Yeah,
And
a lot of it comes down to, for a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of it comes down to fear of failure and fear of being judged. And that usually comes from a past experience. Maybe the test at some point didn't go very well. And unfortunately, in a lot of schools and a lot of houses and a lot of homes around the country, at least here in America, you're punished if you don't do well on a test. And there's repercussions that are negative if you don't do well. A test should be, okay, I don't know this material, so let's go over it again. But instead, it's, so you got an F, so now maybe you don't do well in the class, and that dinks your grade point average, and now you're going to get a good university. And it's just this waterfall of consequences for not doing well on a test. So a lot of pressure gets put on, especially if you've had failure in the past around, doing well on a test. And so there's this fear of failure, and the unfortunate part of getting anxious around a test or giving a speech is that now that you have this fear of failure because it happened maybe once or twice in the past, and people are going to be judging you, whether it's the teacher, parents, or an audience, even if it's just a meeting of 5 people or an audience of 500, you start getting into that stress response. And you start to armor yourself to protect yourself, because the subconscious's main job is to keep you safe and protected. It's for survival, which doesn't necessarily mean your happiness and your prosperity. It wants you alive, which is great. That's a great thing to be alive and safe and protected. But it's using the information it has that you have experienced in the past from various situations, circumstances, events in your past. It's using this information to trigger the stress response when it sees a dangerous situation. Unfortunately, the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And this is most noticeable when somebody's having a nightmare in the middle of the night. And it doesn't matter how crazy, how ridiculous that nightmare may be, a Wizard of Oz tree is chasing you down the street, throwing apples at you, or a cheeseburger, or 2 hot dogs, or whatever. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's not going to happen. Or it could be something very realistic. Maybe a veteran's having a PTSD nightmare about the war, even though it was 30 years ago. And in both instances, both people are cozy, comfortable, safe in bed, but their mind starts thinking they're in danger and needing to protect. It starts turning on the stress response, even in deep sleep. And so the brain starts creating the hormones of adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline, you've probably heard of things of grandmothers lifting cars off of babies and things. That's adrenaline doing that. That's now coursing through your body. Hundreds of millions of these molecules called neuropeptides. And these molecules send the signal of emotion to your body. That's why you can feel the difference between fear and anger and joy and happiness. These are literal molecules of anxiety, molecules of fear, molecules of anger, hundreds of millions dumping into your bloodstream. 300% more blood moving to the big muscle of your arms to fight, 300% more blood moving to the big muscle of your legs to escape, all while you're sleeping. Because it's trying to protect you from this, Wizard of Oz tree throwing apples at you, or a cheeseburger, or the war nightmare. And if you're out in the world in real life and you encounter what your subconscious deems as a dangerous situation, it's also going to turn on the stress response, which again is great if, you know, you're out in nature and maybe seeing the videos of people being chased by bears down the ski slope, or, you know, you know, there's a rattlesnake in the trail, or, you know, something's happening that's dangerous, a fight in the street. It's at these dangerous instances that we want that stress response to kick in, but not when we're
Right.
sitting down to take a test, not when we're about to walk out in front of 5 people or 500 people to give a presentation. That's the wrong time to have all that blood supply move to your big muscles to keep you safe and alive, to armor yourself in that way. And we also get that tunnel vision where, you know, we stop seeing what's in your peripheral and just focus on that one dangerous situation. And we also have a tendency to start shallow breathing and just breathing into top part of our lungs. You feel where your rib cage is. Your rib cage is really big. It's like 2 inches from your hip bones. That's how big your lungs are. But we don't end up breathing in the bottom of your lungs because we're tightening our stomach muscles.
Right.
We're waiting for that 1-2 punch to the gut. So we're tightening that. We're breathing slowly, and our brain takes 20% of the oxygen we breathe in. And so if we're not breathing well, if all our blood supply is moving to the big muscle of our arms, we don't have the nutrients, the fuel, the blood supply, the oxygen to fuel our brain for rational, calm thinking. And so even though you've studied, even though you know the material backwards and forwards, you get into this stress response, this fight or flight stress response that keeps you from doing well on the test, the exam, the speech, the job interview, all because your subconscious mind is actually trying to protect you for something it thought was dangerous. And unfortunately, what is strongest within your mind is what you practice over and over again. And so it just kind of snowballs in that maybe you didn't do well on a book report in the 6th grade, or a history test or something like this, and then just snowballs to the point where you're so nervous before a speech or a job interview that you just, you know, end up choking even more, even though you've practiced, even though you know the material if you're doing a test. And so a big part of the healing around this is not only, you know, dealing with the hurt and pain that may have occurred in the past, but also practicing something else. And again, what is strongest within your mind is what you practice over and over again. What you practice, you get better at. And we know this from, if we're playing piano or guitar or learning dance or martial arts or a foreign language. What you practice, you get better at. And so you can practice peace and calm. You can practice confidence. And that was part of my, you know, healing, in that one of the techniques is practicing who you want to be. And even if it's, you just got 5-10 minutes, you can spend a little bit of time visualizing yourself as a person you want to be, pretending you're that person. Now, literally rewire your brain. And I could go just on the whole point of rewiring your brain. We can go on and on for hours and hours
I
talking
think
about
that's
that.
another
Yeah,
topic
it's a
that
whole
we'll
nother
have to do
topic there,
for sure.
but
I wanted to stop you for a second because a couple things came up as you were talking about that I think it's worth just chatting a little bit. You said we talked about, you know, in the U.S. we put a lot of pressure, but I teach also the 9 to 17-year-old kids, and a lot of my students, for teaching them to be leaders and better public speakers, communicators, is the pressure that the kids that parents are from India or the parents are from an Asian country, which obviously is part of India, I guess. But there is, I think, even more pressure than I see in the US parents. In a lot of cases, you know, it's really, I think, later on going to be impactful to the kids in their sense of worth, always trying to be perfect and best. And so that was one thing. And then you were talking about how this fight or flight kind of causes us to adjust and change and have that tunnel vision. But as soon as you said that, I kept on thinking, you know, this trying to protect our life causes us to keep from living.
Yeah.
And I see this not only in people that are in the workforce, or students, but also in the elderly, that there are so many things that are going on in society, politics, all these things that has that really complete fear factor where they just want to stay in their rooms, lights out, not accept that. And so that's another piece. And so for them, they've lived a longer life identifying what trauma, what pain is causing them to not live. I think is something that's even harder for the older generation, because it used to be the whole idea that your mind is doing all this, your subconscious is doing all this. When they were young, it was, well, you're crazy. You got to be crazy. So if you could just kind of touch on those things.
Also the one of the issues around dealing with hurt and pain from the past is that these feelings that we get, the feeling of anxiety, the feeling of fear, the feeling of anger, these are warning signals that there's danger in the external environment. Now, someone pulls a fire alarm in a building, the sirens go off, the strobe lights go off, warning everybody that there's danger, you need to get to safety. We also have a warning system, and when our subconscious mind gets triggered for danger in the external environment, real or imagined, whether it's a real threat to our safety or something, from a nightmare during a dream, or just, having to go in front of the board of directors to give a presentation or something, whether it's real or imagined, our mind is going to start warning us through our body that there's danger. That warning comes in the feeling state of anxiety or fear or worry or overwhelm, whatever that feeling state may be associated with the issue. If you don't acknowledge that warning, the volume just gets turned up.
Yeah.
And it's just like if you're sitting at your desk and the fire alarm goes off and you just keep sitting at your desk, it's as if the fire alarm would just get louder, because it thinks you're not paying attention. We are paying attention. It's just you don't want to acknowledge that the fire alarm is going off. And so you find various ways to self-soothe, to try to numb yourself from those warning signals that seem to keep going off and off and off over and over and over again. And, maybe it's just a little trickle at the beginning when you're younger. And as you go through life and the challenges of life and the issues that come with family and children and your own elderly parents and work and mortgages and car loans and all those things. And if you don't acknowledge the warning signals that there's danger, the volumes and the sensations and the brightness of it all is just going to get louder until you get to the point where maybe the best thing to do is have that drink or two or three or four, or sit in front of the TV or your screen.
Take that pill, or go to sleep all day. Yeah, sleep all day. I'll just sleep all day.
And not go outside. It's dangerous outside. It doesn't feel good outside. I feel good when I'm inside, and because I feel safe here. And so if that hurt and that pain hasn't been taken care of, and maybe they've tried, maybe they've gone to talk therapy, but if you're not reaching that root issue, they may be talking about that thing that happened 2 years ago. Maybe there was a divorce, or there's the company went bankrupt or something. They got laid off, and they're talking about that issue, and that's very painful and that hurts. But that might not be the root issue that they're dealing with. The root issue may have happened when they were 5 or 6 years old. I was working with somebody one-on-one during a hypnotherapy session, and we had done a few classes. I was working with the cancer support community of Arizona, doing some classes around pain control and healing. So she's in these group classes over Zoom. And early to the third class, she asked me if hypnotherapy works with procrastination. Yeah, we can work with procrastination because that's a defense mechanism. So the next day we set up an appointment because I had some time in the afternoon. So what's interesting about this work is when your subconscious mind realizes that you're going to be doing some healing work, it gets to a certain point where it's like, let's not work on a problem. Let's work on the problem. And so when she got to the appointment over Zoom, she says, I told you I wanted to work with procrastination, but what I really want to work with is what I don't matter in life. I'm guessing she was probably in her 70s.
So huge. So
This
huge.
is a 70-year-old woman who thinks she doesn't matter in life. And so since she had already kind of had some practice with this work, being in the group classes, well, let's go deep then. And so we did a regression back to the feeling state that originated when she first felt she didn't matter in life. Go back to the first time you ever felt that that feeling state has an origin somewhere. And it's within the subconscious mind because it's trying to protect you from that, trying to protect you from ever feeling that again, or protect you from some sort of trauma. And the protection is, okay, well, you don't matter, so keep yourself small, keep yourself in the background. That's what's going to protect you. And so there's an origin to that feeling state of not mattering in life. So we did a regression back, and as we finished the regression, 10 down to 1, and on 1, where are you? And she says, I'm standing up in my crib and my father's screaming at me because I won't stop crying. And it's going to be extraordinarily traumatic. I'm guessing if she's in her 70s, this is the late 1950s, early 1960s. Men don't know how to nurture children. That's not what they were taught how to do. And maybe mom's out of the house and the baby won't stop crying. And the only thing this guy knows how to do, because he's having a bad day, a bad week, a bad life, just screams louder than the baby and tells it to shut up. And in that instant, that child with this new mind that's just absorbing everything, the only thing it could do to justify why this is happening, that this person who's supposed to protect her, to nurture her, to love her, why this person is screaming at her and terrifying her, is that, well, I guess I don't matter in life. And she held on to that for some 70 years until one day she decided it was time to let it go. And she did. And that's the power.
But the thing is, they don't on their own, no. They'll just keep it suppressed.
Yeah. Well, and just think about in talk therapy, how long was it going to take her to get back to being, I don't know what standing up in the crib is, 14 months old, 12 months old, something. How long was it going to take her in talk therapy to get back to that point? And that's what's extraordinary about the power of the subconscious mind. And it's not that I fix anybody or that hypnotherapy in and of itself fixes anybody. You fix yourself. Because again, you know what the problem is. She knew exactly what the problem was, but it was in the unconscious. It was trying to protect her unconsciously. And so she didn't know why she felt like this in her conscious awareness until one day she just said, I've had enough. I don't want to live like this. Whatever in her life, just like, maybe, what I talked about at the very beginning. In 2000, when my son was born, or my wife was pregnant, I thought, okay, I got to get my life together. You get to that point where like, this has to change now. And with her, she knew exactly what the problem was. And more importantly, she knew what the answer was. She knew what the solution was to this issue, how to heal the child, because it's her. And so who better to know what to do about it than her? And so she did. And I heard from her, it was a couple of years ago, and I heard from her for over the course of a year or so. She'd send me an email every now and then, and she was doing fantastic.
Awesome.
Because that's the power of the subconscious mind. It's trying to protect you. And so you can find situations in life like taking a test or doing a speech or job interview or first date or whatever these situations are, where it's trying to protect you, it's trying to keep you safe, but it's trying to keep you safe probably more than likely from a past hurt or pain.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what the problem is, and more importantly, you know what to do about it. And if there's deep-seated hurt, I would highly recommend finding a hypnotherapist, whether working with me or somebody else who knows how to do this work. But also just there's practice to becoming the person you want to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to run off default settings. And the default settings may have been set up by a 7-year-old. And so,
but also, we've talked about exams, students and auditions, if that's always makes you nervous for auditions, but job interviews, but really as entrepreneurs out there, a lot of my audience are entrepreneurs or small business owners, and they get stuck. They're either making a little money or making a lot of money, and it's comfortable and it's safe, and then they think, well, why am I not growing? And I think, kind of what you do can help them get past
Yeah.
that, because that is their subconscious saying, okay, it's safe here. It's wonderful here. Why would you want to change?
Yeah. 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 Especially if you are comfortable. You know, the unknown is dangerous. And that's an evolutionary process. Why put your hand in that cave when there may be a venomous snake or spider or something, even though there may be, I don't know, food or gold or I don't know, whatever. But the unknown is dangerous, and that keeps us safe. That's why we don't, we get that warning signal of anxiety and fear when we're thinking about walking down the dark alley at midnight to take a shortcut home.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Walk the lighted streets where there's lots of people. Yeah, it takes you another 10 minutes, but it's better to do that. So that's good. It keeps us alive. It keeps us safe and protected. It's just when it gets, we use the word corrupted, but when it starts becoming unresourceful, that then maybe we're not growing in a positive way. It keeps us safe so we don't walk down the dark alley at midnight. We don't peer over the edge of the Grand Canyon too far. We don't pet the rattlesnake in the middle of the trail. It's going to keep us safe. We're going to move away from the fight in the street or in the restaurant or wherever. We're going to move away from that, keep ourselves small. But when it becomes unresourceful, it doesn't become resilient for us, is when then we're maybe not taking the job interview because we're nervous about it, or we don't think we're up for the responsibility of the job, and so we back away from it,
Right.
Or find a way to get out of making the presentation at the big meeting, even though we know it might lead to a promotion down the road. It's that fear of failure, that fear of being judged, as well as you're moving out of your comfort zone, and it's your comfort zone because it's comfortable.
Right.
And who wants to be uncomfortable?
Right.
It doesn't feel good. But that's kind of the unfortunate thing, the growing pains, as they say, as we're growing from children into young adults. It's like, yeah, growing can have some pain at times, but when you have a toolbox full of tools to move through life, and whether it's what we've been talking about today, or some of the other guests you've had on your podcast, or the books you read, or the blog posts, or the videos you watch on YouTube. Is like there's many tools and techniques and strategies and skills. It's just you got to do it. The Dalai Lama still meditates every day. The man's 89 years old. And if there's anybody to have it down by now, you think it'd be that guy. But he read his books. He talks about the anger and the sorrow and despair. He's a human being. And what's going on in Tibet creates anger and sorrow and despair. They're still bulldozing down his monasteries and arresting his monks. And, he's exiled out of Tibet in 1958 or 1957, something like that. And he gets angry. He's a human being. He's going to feel those. That's a natural response to an extraordinary situation. But he doesn't want that to be who he is. So every day he practices loving kindness and compassion. And again, if anybody's have it down by now, you think it'd be that guy. He's not married. He has no kids. He's had a staff of people to meet his every need and want since he was about 5 or 6 years old. And still 89 years old, he's still practicing these techniques and these strategies that he uses in his life to be the person he wants to be. So you can have all the joy, the happiness, the confidence you want, but it does take some effort. I'm sure a lot of your listeners know Tony Robbins, the personal growth guy. There's that documentary that came out about him some years ago. I'm sure some of your listeners have seen it. I'm Not Your Guru, which I think is on Netflix. And it shows him at a week-long event in front of 10,000 people, but it also shows behind the scenes stuff. And it also shows him getting up in the morning. And he's doing the cold plunge. He's doing the little trampoline to awaken his adrenal glands. He's doing his meditation work that he does. And this guy's been doing it for 40 years. Tony Robbins started in 1980. That big book of his, Awaken the Giant Within, came out in like late 80s, early 90s. This guy's been doing the work for 40 years, and he's still doing. He still puts himself in state before he walks out on stage.
Yeah.
And so if you have to take a test, if you have to do a job interview, if you have to give a presentation, a speech, something, just don't walk in from your car to the room. Put yourself in state, just like Tony Robbins puts himself in state, just like Dalai Lama is still meditating every day, just like any master musician or master of martial arts or gymnastics or dance. They're going to practice every day. And so put yourself in state, just like Tony Robbins before he walks out on a stage. 40 years later, he's still making sure he's the Tony Robbins when he walks out on stage. He's not in that, he's not wearing the hat of being a business owner, dealing with taxes and the events of next year and talking to his wife on the phone and dealing with the kids and the homework. And yeah, he has to deal with all that. But when he walks down on stage, he wants to make sure he's the Tony Robbins. And so when you walk into a test, make sure you're the person who's ready to take the test or do the job interview or do the audition. And you'll notice as you practice this, and don't wait until it's right before the test. Don't wait until it's, a minute before you walk into the room or the audition or the job interview or the speech. Practice this up to, the weeks ahead of time, becoming that person of peace and calm and confidence. And you can just pretend. That's the biggest piece of advice. I know we're probably running up against the clock here, but the biggest piece of advice I can give, just take a few minutes every day and pretend you're the person you want to be. And how literally wire that into your brain. Your mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. Use that to your advantage. Imagine, having that nightmare and literally change your physiology. Through thought alone, you can change your physiology, no matter how crazy it is. So if you think it's crazy that you can have joy and happiness and confidence, it's crazy that a cheeseburger chases you down the street and you start sweating and punching the air and things because you're trying to get away from it. What if you pretended you were joyful, you were happy? That will literally wire that into your brain. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. So true. So true. You have to really go in there believing in yourself, believing that the audience, the interviewer, that they're going to love you, that the test, that you're going to ace it, that you are going to be wonderful. And that really does help so much.
Yeah. And if you don't believe in yourself, pretend that you believe in yourself.
No,
What would it feel like to believe in yourself? What does that feel like? And then go from there.
I always say, I will believe in you until you believe in yourself. Sometimes that's just the crutch or the stepping stone that you need to take you forward on your journey.
Yeah.
Time has really flown by, and we do need to I'm going to make a note to do a rewiring of your mindset and your brain. I know I've had one other person talk about that, but I think it's important to just really educate and inform the audience that it is possible to do that. That, most of us that seem like we've got it all together at some point in time did not.
Yeah. And that point in time may have been,
yesterday.
Yesterday afternoon, after that phone call or that email.
I can't tell you how many people that worked with me for many years, and then whenever I did something that was memorable, they're like, God, I didn't know you had that in you. I'm thinking, oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah. Well, and again, Dalai Lama still gets angry and probably afraid and depressed and sad, and because it's a human emotion. And he's a human being, and we all are. And so there's also a certain point where you have to have compassion for yourself and patience with yourself, when doing this work. Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure. If you, the audience, have enjoyed hearing all the things that Craig has had to say today and really are intrigued and want to get to know him better, to either, as we said in the bio, to either help yourself or help others. Watching this and you're just listening, I am going to read, as always, the information, but you can find it on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling. So please subscribe, as well as you can go to findyourleadershipconfidence.com. It will be in the video show notes. You want to go to aceanytest.com. Again, that website is aceanytest.com. On LinkedIn, he's Craig-Meriwether. A bunch of numbers. If you just do Craig-Meriwether, Meriwether. Again, Meriwether does not have an A in it, so Wether. On Facebook, it is Ace Any Test, initial capped, And Instagram is ace_any_test. And YouTube is at AceAnyTest. I'm going to turn it over to Craig to talk to you about his call to action today, how he can connect with you via social media, and also the resources on his website that may help you on your journey to overcome your anxiety, your fears, your phobias, and to be the better you. All yours.
Thank you, Vicki. Probably the best way to get in touch with me is just through the website, aceanytest.com. You can also find me at my hypnotherapy business, which is Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. Or if you just Google Flagstaff Hypnosis, you'll see Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy come up, and that is me. If through social media, if I do social media, it's usually just Facebook. I have some of the others, but I'm not as proficient at getting on those. So Facebook is probably the one I'm on the most. But if you really want to get in touch with me, it's probably aceanytest.com. It's probably the best way.
Awesome. So thank you so much for being a wonderful guest, Craig. I definitely did enjoy our conversation today, and we definitely will get back together to do a second segment. But for those that are listening, please do go to that aceanytest.com website to learn more. And thank you again for being such a great guest.
I appreciate the invitation. It was a fun conversation.
Awesome. And as always, I remind everyone every day. So life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.